Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 here at the CBIT Global Conferences. My name is Brent Goff, and I want to start with a question. That was our new jingle that you just heard. Does everyone know where the jingle comes from? If you do, raise your hand. We were just wondering. It's the song Happy. All right, well, stick with us throughout the week, and we guarantee you that it will become, as the Germans say, an Ohrwurm in your head, and you'll be singing it all week. So just trust us on that one. We'd like to welcome you this morning to day 2. We'd also like to extend an extra welcome to people who are following the CBIT Global Conferences online live stream. Just want to let you know, if you want to get to that, what you have to do is you have to go to cbit.de and then click on to the CBIT Global Conferences, and there you'll find the link for live stream. And a reminder, if you want to send us your questions for our guests, you can tweet those to me. You can use hashtag CGC14. They'll be here on our Twitter board that we can see. We'll also put it on the screen, and we'll try to get as many questions as we can to our guests. Yesterday, we kicked off the CBIT Global Conferences with a lively debate on cyber security, and we want to pick up on that topic again this morning. Our first keynote speaker has a name that is synonymous with internet security. He is here this morning to talk about what he calls the underbelly of the internet, where the criminals are lurking for their big day with big data. So, it's time for a status report from the cyber jungle. Please help me welcome this morning the CEO and the chairman of Kaspersky Lab, Mr. Eugene Kaspersky.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the world of cyber threats. Maybe Tuesday morning is not a very right time to talk about that, but I have no option. So, welcome, fasten the seatbelts, and enjoy my speech. By the way, do you have the clicker? How shall I change the presentations, the slides? Any idea? No. Okay. That's good. Let's see. Okay. Thank you. Dankeschön. Okay, welcome to the cyberspace and the world of cyber threats. I call it the ecosystem of cyber jungles. What's going on there, how it looks like, and what are the major issues there, and actually what to do. Well, I have a mathematical education, so I like to split all the problems in the categories. And the cyber threats, I put them in 3 different categories. The first category is cybercrime. Cybercrime is huge, it's everywhere. How many people here in the room were not victims of cybercrime? Okay. Well, I'm not a victim of cybercrime. Well, that's my business to handle that. Okay. So there's cybercrime, espionage attacks, and cyber sabotage. Cybercrime, which is cybercrime, everyone understands that. Espionage, of course, we know what's this. And cyber sabotage, that attacks on the critical infrastructure, attacks on the businesses, enterprises, governments, to damage the national economy, their businesses, and well, actually that's cyber attacks to kill. And I'm going to talk a little bit about all these 3 categories and the ways how to protect us from these types of threats. Cybercrime. Yes, it's huge. How many people are in the cybercrime business? Nobody knows. But we know that actually we have reports from the cyber police from the different parts of the world, and I think that there could be maybe 10,000 people, maybe 100,000 people everywhere. And the cybercrime speaks different languages. It speaks Chinese, English, of course, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian. Sorry for this, but well, it's not maybe not Russia, but maybe also the Baltic countries, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Seattle, Silicon Valley, Hanover, maybe, yes, yeah. It's huge, and cybercrime is different. Well, actually, the cyber criminals, which are, it's a phenomenon of the last decade. Actually, they the massive cyber criminals appeared in very early of 2000s. Then there were first internet services like online banking, online money. They were introduced. By the way, if you don't remember, in 90s, online banking didn't exist. Do you remember? Well, in 90s, well, it did exist. Only for enterprises, not for consumers. In 90s, smartphones didn't exist. Do you remember? In 90s, Skype didn't exist. Bitcoins. And many other things. In 90s, what did exist in 90s? Email, web, dial-up. Do you remember? How many people still remember what dial-up is? Floppy disks. PDP-11. Okay, so cybercrime actually it was just a little problem in the 90s, and it started to rise in 2000. There were just individuals, just little gangs, IT guys, geeks, which turned the mind in the wrong way. But now the cybercrime is more complicated. Actually, there are individuals and gangs and criminal services. They attack consumers and businesses. They're very professional criminal gangs. They don't attack consumers. They're not interested in a little money. They attack enterprises. I'm pretty sure before these attacks, they become customers of the same banks. They install the same bank software. They emulate the same environment as a victim has. They develop, it's true. And actually they develop their attacks based on the knowledge of based on the knowledge about the experience about the bank services. And they do it perfectly. Unfortunately, there are many enterprises that are victims of the bank attacks. Another bad story is that organized crime is coming to the cyberspace. I don't mean that traditional criminals, mafia, they're exchanging emails and they coordinate the crime by SMS, by mobile phone, by smartphone calls. No, it's simple. They are using their computer system in a very active way. We have a very interesting report from Europol about Antwerp seaport, which was hacked by drug cartels from Latin America. Actually, drug cartels from Latin America, they transport cocaine in sea containers. Do you remember there was a news that in Germany, in some supermarket, they opened the boxes with bananas and there was a cocaine? Do you remember? So actually they transport cocaine in this such a way. So they have a sea container with some stuff there, and they just plant extra cocaine to these containers. So they have to remove it in Europe. So they know the containers with cocaine. So they hacked computer system in Antwerp seaport, the computer system which was loading and unloading containers, because it's automatic. There are no engineers, there are no workers, only engineers. So they knew containers with cocaine and they hacked the system to unload them to the safe zone. Actually, drug cartels, they don't have enough experience, they don't know how to do that. They employed software engineer. Traditional crime is coming to the cyberspace. Congratulations. Another story, there was a hack on the petrol station network. They hacked SCADA system which managed I don't know how does it work. They just SCADA system which managed their petrol and payment system. And they issued a special plastic cards to pay for petrol. They also have a very good discount. So you buy this card, plastic card, you go to the petrol station and you buy petrol at a very good price. The coal mine, they're taking coal from the ground and they put it to the trains to transport it. And actually there's a SCADA system to manage all that. They hacked SCADA, so they were loading say 8 tones, but reporting 9. So about 10% of the call which was produced, it was stolen. And this gang was operating for 5 years before it was recognized. 5 years. Well, the petrol station gang was in this business for 1 month. It was recognized very quickly because, well, actually, it's easy to compare the petrol and money. The call, the call was from, it's a Russian story. So the call could be with water, rains, or maybe ice. So it's very difficult to check the weight. And then the police came to investigate this. Computer system is the very, very, very last thing police is coming to check, because police doesn't have any clue about computer systems. Agree? So, there are criminals which are cyber criminals which attack consumer, cyber criminals which attack businesses. Traditional crime is coming to the business, and also inside attacks on the SCADA systems in the, like a petrol station or coal mine. That's inside attacks. That's the landscape of the cybercrime. Plus to this, hacktivists. I think I don't need to explain what the hacktivists, who is hacktivists are. Well, technically, they just have a different motivation. They have a political motivation or religious motivation. Not many of them, they are interested in money. They also want money. So maybe, basically, maybe hacktivists in the morning, they are hacktivists, they are politically motivated. At the end of the day, they need some money to the nightlife, and they become cyber criminals. Well, but technically speaking, hacktivists, they violate criminal code, so they are criminals as well. So that's about cybercrime. Espionage. Yes. It does exist. A lot of that. From everywhere. I split espionage attacks into 2 categories: Chinese speaking and non-Chinese speaking. Non-Chinese speaking attacks, they made in a more professional way, so actually there is almost no attribution. We can attribute some of these attacks only by the language which is spoken by the people who are managing this, because we can find the text strings. If you remember the Red October espionage attack, which was Russian, I'm sorry for this. But I didn't say Russia behind that. Maybe Ukraine, maybe Kazakhstan, maybe Baltic countries, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe there any other country which employs Russian-speaking software engineers. I don't know. Well, actually, we don't do attribution because it's very tricky. But we said it's a Russian-speaking attack because there were some Russian terms, some Russian words, slang, computer slang, inside of the code. Recently we published the data about the Spanish-speaking espionage attack, the Mask. Did you see the Mask story? How many people read the news about the Mask espionage attack? Okay, so, well, actually in this attack we said that the Spanish, because there are some text strings which use Spanish text, which is Spanish. They don't have it in Latin America. At the same time, we have some attacks which are Latin American Spanish, not Spanish. So we can recognize sometimes the language which is spoken. So I split all these attacks into 2 categories: Chinese speaking and non-Chinese speaking. Non-Chinese speaking more accurate, it's very difficult to attribute, and Chinese speaking, they don't care. Who is behind these attacks? Actually, I don't have any proof. There could be state agencies, but maybe hackers which are employed by state agencies, but maybe independent hackers which just steal all the data and they trade this data to enterprises and government. Maybe. I don't know. Hacktivists are in espionage attacks as well, but they don't sell it. They just publish the data which was stolen. Do you remember Mr. Assange? You still remember? Come on, we have a new hero. Sorry. Okay, so well, actually the espionage attacks, they're everywhere. Unfortunately, they're huge, massive attacks. And of course it damages trust between nations. And this is the espionage attacks. I think it's a very bad idea. It's too much. And we are living in a very, very, very fast world. We still remember, well, I do remember the time before internet, before mobile phones. That was simple world. Yes? Now it's more complicated. I don't understand the student life. When I was a student, I had to split my life between two things, education and girls. Now they have to split the life between education, girls, and the internet. I don't understand how to survive. So it's crazy world. And it was being developed so quick. It's amazing. The speed of development, it's a crazy time. Crazy in a very positive meaning. Espionage attacks, they damage trust between nations. So the nations will allocate resources mostly on the national IT projects, not global. It means that the global IT projects will have a less of investment, less resources, and it will damage the speed of cyberspace development. Do you like it? I don't. I want to live in a world which is being developed so quick, like it was in the past, like it's now. But I'm afraid because of the espionage attacks which damage the trust, which are forcing the nations to invest to the local projects. So the nations will do exactly the same job at the same time. Germany is busy with a national or regional internet project. Brazil the same. Russia, yes. So the nations will pay to the, well, local IT companies are very happy. But what about the global world development? The nations will do exactly the same job themselves. Well, I like global world. I like the world where we share our knowledge, share our projects. I like the united world, not the world which is fragmented to the very national pieces. We are living in the 21st century. I don't want to get back to the 19th century. Because of espionage attacks, I'm afraid it's a very big risk that we go back. Okay, next, cyber sabotage. We don't have, we're lucky, we don't have too many cyber sabotage attacks. Just few. Attack on Estonia. Do you remember the internet blackout in Estonia? Next year there was a report, there's a very short report about attacks on the Brazil power plants. Unfortunately, I don't have hard data, but you can Google. There was a CIA report, just a couple of sentences, that there was a sabotage attack on Brazilian power plants. And from other sources I've heard about the criminal attack on the power plants, which result was a blackout in a couple of Brazilian cities, and the criminals, they sent blackmails to power companies. I can't prove my words, I just heard that. But then there was Stuxnet, you know. Then there was attacks on Iran, the oil companies in Iran, the data was wiped in spring, well actually in the winter and spring of 2012, sorry. Then there was attack on the Saudi Aramco, the gas and oil company from Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil company. It was paralyzed for 2 weeks. 30,000 computers, servers, backups, computer gadgets, they lost the data. So the oil production was in the place, everything was okay. Ships were coming. The oil logistic lines were okay. The problem was a computer system. Employees were in the office. The problem was a computer system, they were damaged. So the company for 2 weeks was paralyzed. Simple attack. Next year it happened with South Korean media companies and South Korean financial services. Same, wiping the data. So actually there are 3 scenarios of this kind of the attacks on the critical infrastructure. Attacks on the physical environment, when the physical systems are damaged. Second, attacks on the data, on the computer system, wiping the data or changing the data, which you can't use it after that. And attacks on the telecommunications. 3 different scenarios. I call it cyber terrorism, I call it cyber weapons, or cyber sabotage. We're lucky we didn't have too many of these kind of attacks, but unfortunately it's coming. This year there were 2 reports. The first report was from Japan about nuclear power plant, and operation room was infected by criminal malware. Criminal attack, so it wasn't a problem. But they said that the criminal malware managed to establish connection to the remote server. It means that the computers from the operation room in nuclear power plant are connected to the internet. And second attack, the second report was from Moscow. Well, not from Moscow, from the Moscow region. There was a hack on the computer network which managed speed cameras in Moscow, and they shut down all the cameras, all the speed cameras. So police started to collect less penalties. Yes, I agree. maybe that's a good idea. But it's an indicator that they pay more attention to the physical environment, to the physical systems which are managed by computers. So, what to do? Actually, there are 4 things to do. 4. Technologies and products, education, government regulation, and international cooperation. Education, technologies. Actually, we do have technologies. We have products which can protect us better from the cybercrime. And actually, if you have a good enough internet security suite, if you keep your mind switched on, you are protected from cybercrime attacks. But I mean technologies in a very wide definition. It's not only technologies, but also regulation, the standards. The reality is that IT is being developed so quick, so there are no standards for IT in the critical infrastructure. When this hall was being built, engineers were following the standards. The power grid was made according to the standards, correct? IT systems are made as they want. So, I am voting for the standards, IT standards for critical infrastructure. Standards and penalties if engineers don't follow standards. So actually that's technologies. And of course the system must be up-to-date. Well, I am working with IT, with the critical IT infrastructure, and I know that sometimes I can face MS-DOS system. Do you remember MS-DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System? Do you remember that? Last year there was a news from American Nuclear Agency. They were looking for software engineers for nuclear power plants in the United States, and they were looking for PDP-11 software engineers. That's why I said, ask you, do you remember PDP-11? How many people still remember what a PDP-11 is? Okay, for the rest of the audience, PDP-11 is... Google that. It's like a big fridge with a 2 megabyte disks, 2 megabyte, like a 3 kilos, 2 megabyte disk. Do you remember? Yeah, yes, I do. Okay, so first of all, technologies. We can protect this world in a much better way. Second, education. It's education not only for individuals, not only for IT engineers, but for everyone. The education, how to behave in a cyberspace in a more safe and a more secure way. It's education for enterprises, how to manage the systems, how to design IT systems in a more safe and more secure way. And sometimes the ideas are very simple. How to protect your enterprise from a Stuxnet attack? Simple. You have you have the power plant which runs Microsoft Windows. There are engineers, well, okay, not Microsoft Windows, Linux. There are engineers which develop new software because they have to upgrade the software, also Linux. So they bring the software to the power plant. And this is the way how to infect the critical infrastructure, actually to infect supplier. And supplier will bring the infection to the protected environment. What to do? Simple, plant windows in between. Make it as a must. You have to copy all Linux software to Windows first, then check it, and then copy it from Windows to Linux to their protected device. That's it. Simple. Well, of course, it doesn't guarantee 100% security because it's possible to develop the malware which will infect both Windows and Linux. Yes, it's possible. But it will make attack much, much more expensive and will protect you from the random attacks. Actually, there are many things we can do by just a simple education. Educating consumers, educating enterprises, and please don't forget about security audits. Well, it's a very good idea to call consultants to check your critical IT infrastructure. Law enforcement, cyber police, national cyber security organization. Yes, you need it. Everyone needs it. And more regulation about in the cyberspace. I think the government role to build a framework for IT in a critical infrastructure is just a must. And I'd like to split the IT world, the cyberspace, into different categories. Consumers, give freedom for consumers. Let them use IT systems that they want. Don't care about the security there because they are responsible for security. And there's a critical infrastructure. And governments must introduce very strict regulation to critical infrastructure. In between, that's in between. 50-50. And of course, the international cooperation. Because the cyberspace doesn't have borders, it doesn't have distances, it doesn't have time, so governments must work much close to each other. Forget about political issues, forget about political problems. In the cyberspace, governments must cooperate. They must cooperate against cybercrime. Well, actually, Interpol, Europol are very busy with this, and we are very good friends of Interpol to assist them with a new cyber division in Singapore. Governments must cooperate against cyber terrorism, cyber sabotage, and make cyber weapons forbidden, because I believe that cyber weapons is the worst innovation of this century. So, we are living in a very dangerous world. There are criminals, there are espionage, and we are facing the cyber terrorism, cyber sabotage. Very dangerous world, and we can't stop it because we depend on IT, and we can't get back to the pre-internet time. Do you want to get back to the pre-internet time? No way. Computer systems, they're everywhere. Well, because they are more reliable than Homo sapiens. The Homo sapiens is a very old system. If you trust scientists, Homo sapiens were designed 60,000 years ago, maybe 100,000 years ago. It's a very old design. Computer systems, they're more reliable. They work. They don't need salary. They're not members of trade unions. Technically, they make much less mistakes. That's why computer systems are everywhere. So we depend on that. But the design of existing systems is not really safe. So we are in danger. Listen, I'm working for 25 years in IT security. That's why I'm paranoid. I'm paranoid, but I'm still optimistic. We are in danger, but we will survive. Thank you.
So, but we've got time for one question. I was told to ask, you're paranoid, but you're hopeful. What's your take on what's happening right now in Crimea, Ukraine, Russia? Do you think there is a cyber terror, cyber criminal aspect?
We don't have any report about cyber sabotage attack, but we have many reports on attacks, mostly on media, on the websites. Russian websites are attacked and Ukrainian websites are attacked. Russian companies are under attack and Ukrainian are under attack. But I don't think it's the governments behind this. Well, I still don't have data about this. it looks like the hacktivist attacks. So the patriotic Russians and too much patriotic Russians and too much patriotic Ukrainians, they attack each other. But in some cases, I think it's the mercenaries. So it's just the services. So they pay money to someone who attacks. It was a very funny story. If you remember, there was a protests in Moscow, political protests in Moscow. There was a opposition against government, all this stuff. So we saw the botnet, which was designed for DDoS attacks, for distributed attacks. So at the same time, this botnet was attacking opposition and government. Mm-hmm. So they're just mercenaries.
Okay.
So they're working for money.
Okay. Final question I was told to ask, who do you fear more? Cyber criminals or the NSA?
Oh,
come on.
Oh, oh.
All right.
Thank you. Well,
we've got 1 minute, Mr.
Every time, all the time I work on my computer systems, I keep in mind, I'm paranoid IT security expert. I do my best to protect my computers. I do my best to keep my mind switched on, not trusting anyone. But anyway, when I'm working on my computer system, every time I think I'm sure about someone could be watching me.
Someone's watching us.
Anyway, it's possible. Almost every computer system is vulnerable. Did you check our report about the anti-theft technology in the computer system? So almost every notebook has this technology. It's very vulnerable. It's very easy to hack computer, and there's no way to protect because it's in a bias. So unfortunately, we are living in a very, very vulnerable world.
Mr. Kaspersky, unfortunately, I'm being told we have to move on.
Yes, so I'm paranoid, you know, but we will survive.
Thank you.
I promise.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.